Hey, what's up, students? We are starting week 2 of our series called FAM, and today I wanted to start by talking about my favorite fictional family. So real quick before I get into that, what's yours? You can go ahead and shout it out. If you're in small group, they'll hear you. If you're by yourself, then you'll hear you. If you're with somebody else, then you can tell them. But what is your favorite fictional family? I don't know about you, but I always wanted to grow up as part of my favorite fictional family. It's like you watch them on TV and everything just seems so perfect and you want to be involved. For me, one of them was green, one of them was red. It's actually a cucumber and a tomato. You may have heard of them as Bob and Larry. I'm talking about VeggieTales. When you watch that family just act out scenes from the Bible as vegetables, there's nothing that makes you want to be a part of it more. I don't know what your favorite family is, but my guess is that as you've watched TV or movies and checked out these families, you've probably thought at some point, I wish my family was a little more like blank. Right? Because our families, one thing we know is that our families are not perfect. They may be imperfect for different reasons. For you, maybe in your family, in your house, there's a lot of tension. Like you've just spent a lot of time with them because of COVID and the effects on that, and you can't get away from them, and there's just tension all the time in your house. Or maybe, like me, your parents are divorced, and so it doesn't feel perfect because of that. Maybe it's something different altogether. Maybe there are secrets in your family. There are conflicts between certain people in your family. But I know this. I may not understand exactly your family situation, but I do know that your family is not perfect because it's made up of people who are not perfect. Now, that can be kind of sad sometimes, and we can wish things were different, but today we're actually going to look at a story in the Bible where God interacts with an imperfect family. And there are lessons we can learn about our families from how God interacts with them, from what He shows us, from what we can see in their imperfections. And I think it'll be really good for us. So what you need to know about this family is it's actually a family very special to God's heart. God made a covenant. He made this promise with a guy named Abraham, that Abraham was going to be the father of a whole bunch of people. There's going to be a whole nation that comes out of Abraham's family, and that they were going to be God's chosen people. And so there's this special interaction between God and this family. And on down the line, Abraham eventually has a son. There's a whole story to that we don't have time to go into, but he eventually has a son named Isaac, and Isaac has 2 sons. And they're twin brothers, and here's where the story starts to get really interesting as far as a family. There's a guy named Jacob and a guy named Esau. Now, Jacob, what you need to know about him is he was kind of a thinker and a poet. He was somebody who liked being inside. He liked to cook, the Bible describes him as. And then on the other hand, there's the other twin brother, Esau. Esau was an outdoorsman. He was actually listed in the Bible as being hairy. That's what he was known for. I can relate to that just a little bit. But he was very hairy. He had red hair. That's what we know about Esau. He loved to hunt and to fish and to be outside. And this is where the family dynamics start to get really messy, because what we know is that because they were twin brothers, there was only going to be one who could receive a birthright from their family, who would receive a blessing from their dad, and that son should have been Esau. Because according to that culture, the oldest son is the one who receives the birthright, which means double the money in the inheritance. Sounds good, right? Think for a second on how you would spend double the money from your siblings. Okay. Come back. So not only double the money, but also power. Also, the family line would continue through the son that is chosen for this birthright. And it would have fallen to Esau because he was born just before Jacob. But this caused this tension and this friction between brothers. I mean, you may have sibling rivalry. You may have a brother or sister that you guys kind of fight sometimes. But my guess is it's not at this level as this family. I mean, they hated each other. They both wanted the same thing, and only one of them could get it. And to make matters worse, y'all, I don't know about you, but growing up, I always thought, my mom or my dad, they like my brothers better than me. And you may joke about that, or you may actually think that. Well, the truth of the matter is the mom liked Jacob better and the dad liked Esau better. The Bible literally says that, which means that the sons knew that. So, I mean, just imagine sitting down for family dinner with your brother who you don't like and your mom who likes you and your dad who likes your brother. I mean, there'd be a lot of tension there, right? Like there'd be a lot of brokenness. This is an imperfect family. So much so, it eventually gets to the point that when it's time to give out the birthright, Jacob tricks Esau into giving him that birthright. And it even goes on further when it's time for the father, the dad, to give his blessing to his son. He wants to give it to Esau. And so this Jacob and his mom hatched this plan to trick his dad into giving Jacob the blessing instead. Combined with the birthright, this would mean that God's promise to Abraham, to Isaac, would now be passed down to Jacob rather than Esau. And so in Genesis, we pick up this story. And it's in chapter 27, starting in verse 34. It says this. This is right after Jacob has tricked his dad into receiving the blessing rather than Esau. It says this. Verse 33, then Isaac trembled very violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed. So Isaac accidentally gave the blessing to Jacob, and Esau's realizing it right now. As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. I don't want to imitate that. This was not a happy noise, and said to his father, bless me, even me also, O my father. But his dad said, your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing. Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Do you hear the pain in this? He's like, Dad, I understand that you gave away the blessing, but can you give me something? Give me some blessing. My brother has tricked me. And in verse 37, it wraps up this thought. Isaac answered and said to Esau, behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. And with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, have you but one blessing, O my father? Bless me, and even me also. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Y'all, this is painful. Like, this is the kind of stuff you would see in a soap opera. This is excruciating. This is sad. This is hard, where there's this family that is imperfect, that don't all love each other, and there is brokenness that comes from this. What's crazy to me, though, is that this can teach us how we can have a different perspective on our own family's imperfection. Because later in the book of Hebrews, there's a verse, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 20, where it talks about the fact that by faith, Isaac blessed Esau and Jacob. They both received a blessing. Here's why the Bible talks about this way. God still uses this family. You may not realize it, but those guys, Jacob, on down through his family line, would eventually come Jesus. So Jesus was born to this family. Years and years and generations later, how cool is it that God would take an imperfect, broken family and use it in an incredible way? He brought healing, he brought restoration. In fact, later in this story, Jacob and Esau are reunited together. The immediate reaction to this was that Esau wanted to kill Jacob. But after years pass, God brings redemption and healing to this family, and they come back together. And Esau was humble enough to forgive Jacob, and Jacob was humble enough to ask for forgiveness and receive that. God can bring healing and redemption and good things out of the brokenness of even our families. So here's what I want to ask you. Are you willing to look at your family, see that it's not perfect, and recognize that a perfect and good and loving Father, God, can also bring good things out of it? God still uses imperfect families. He did it with Jacob and Esau. He can do it in your family. And so we can trust him that even when our family is hard, even when there's brokenness and there's pain, he is still good and he is still at work. So my hope for you is today you would realize the hope that's found through Jesus. We are adopted into God's family. We are brought into his family, and that is good. And it gives us hope in the middle of our brokenness and our pain. So when you see your imperfect family, remember there's a perfect God that loves you and loves every single member in that family.